All right. How is everybody doing? Hey, it's good to see all of you here. It's time for a hot topic, folks. It's good to do this on stream. I have some thoughts to share. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to learning from all of you as well. Maybe you have some good insights for me. Maybe you tell me I'm wrong. That's fine as well. But good to see you. Say hi in chat if you're here. That's always good to know who's with us here today. Yeah, generics is the topic of today, and it's gonna be an interesting one. Before I dive into generics, by the way, I did want to mention who. I'm not sure if there are any Laravel developers watching live or afterwards, but last week on my birthday, actually, the 30th of July, there was a pretty big thing with Laravel. It was Laracon US, lots of great announcements, but one of the things I'm super proud of as well, finally, after quite a lot of work, honestly, we managed to announce with the PHP Storm team that Laravel IDEA is now free for all PHP Storm users. And I just wanted to mention that as well. I don't usually do the marketing stuff on this channel here. It's just something I'm super excited for myself. We got this question by so many developers for years, actually, and it took it took quite a lot of work to get all in order, but it's finally ready. So happy belated birthday. Thank you, Mohammed, as well. Hello, Michal I don't know, it's pronounced wrong probably, but what's up with my hair actually? Oh my. No, but I did want to mention that because it's super cool. If you want to learn more about it, go to jetbrains.com/phpstorm/Laravel and you'll learn all about it. I've been using that plugin for years. It's one of the biggest things to happen to PHP Storm, in my opinion, in years. So very impactful, very cool. So if you haven't heard about that, Laravel supporting PHP Storm for free for everyone, just putting it out there. Compiled time generics. That's what I want to talk about today. And almost right, Michael. I don't know. Hi, Hugo as well. Ugo. I don't know. Names, folks. Names. So yeah, compiled time generics. Yay or nay? It's such a thought-provoking title, people's fantasies already going wild. I want to say up front, folks, you need to read this blog post before saying you want compiled generics in PHP, because you may or may not know, I've been talking and writing about generics quite a lot over the past years, actually. I've got a couple of blog posts about generics. I did a video series about generics, actually. I think it was the very first video series I did on this channel here, or oldest. Event driven, that was first, but then and then named arguments, then generics. Yeah, okay. One of the first videos I did, and then I did a whole series, generics in PHP, generics in depth. Why we can't have generics, and in the case, good times. This is so long ago. 3 years. I was so young. Just turned 31, actually. I'm getting older. But all of that to say that, generics are quite, I'm for generics. I've been saying this for years now. Generics in PHP would be really, really cool. And I've been saying that we don't need runtime type checked generics, right? That's my stance. We just need the generic syntax built into PHP with the proper spec so that static analyzers know what generics should look like instead of all trying to do their own thing. And then life will be good. We can write proper syntax and just use static analyzers to work with that generic syntax. That's my case for runtime ignored generics. And you would think compile time generics. That's what I'm talking about, right? Nothing runtime, just during compile time. This is what we want, right? And so this is why I say, people, you need to read through this whole blog post, and we're gonna do that. Bear with me. There are a lot of thoughts to share here. It's super interesting, but we really need to make sure that this doesn't blow up, and it's already happening. Like if you go on the Reddit here, some people actually took the time to read it, but then people are just like, yes, 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 more generics, please. Anyway, there are quite a lot of comments here. People really excited about it. On Twitter as well, I saw some things flying by. And yes, we should be excited about generics in PHP, and the fact that the foundation is still working on this, I think really great. Gina was doing a lot of work on generics as far as I understand, and then she wrote together with Larry this blog post here. But there are a lot of side notes to be made. So the scene has been set. I know I'm bouncing my desk. I'm sorry. The scene has been set. We're going to read through this blog post. It's not super long. It will be fine. Like the blog post itself, it looks long here, but it's actually all the Reddit comments are included. So, the blog post isn't all that long. And this is really cool, actually, including Reddit comments, embedding them on a website. I wonder how that works. Redditify, apparently. Anyway, compile time generics, yay or nay, and just upfront, nay from me. Big nay, and I'll explain why. So one of the most sought after features, definitely, for PHP is generics. The ability to have a type that takes another type as a parameter. It's a feature found in most compiled languages, but implementing generics in an interpreted language like PHP, where all the type checking would have to be done at runtime, this is false, has always proven really, really hard and really, really slow, or both. Like, okay, we're stopping here. We assume it has to be done at runtime, and as long as we keep this mentality of checking types at runtime, generics are not coming to PHP. There was another blog post by the foundation, I think half a year ago, that it would have too much impact on performance and maintenance, right? And that makes sense because generics aren't a runtime tool. They are used for static analysis. They are a compile time tool to help you with code insights and not necessarily with doing checks at runtime. There are languages that are interpreted that don't check their types at runtime. Python is an example, for example. So it's possible, There is no rule saying that PHP must do all its type checks at runtime. Just making that clear up front. Experimentation by the PHP Foundation's dev team suggests that we may be able to get 80% of the benefit for 20% of the work. Is that enough? So no, it's not enough, because that 80% is vastly exaggerated. I'm sorry to say, and I'm going to give examples. The proposal they have here is only a sliver of what generics would give us if we would have them during compile time. The short version. We believe it's possible to implement generics on only interfaces and abstract classes. I'm fine with that. That's okay. I like programming to an interface. Abstract classes, I also almost never write extend anymore because of using interfaces everywhere, but that's my thing. That's fine. But abstract classes and interfaces, perfect. We don't need generics anywhere else. Perfectly fine. Which would offer a large chunk of the benefit of generics, but avoid most of the pitfalls. Sounds good, right? It sounds like the dream. In particular, interfaces and abstract classes could declare that they need one or more types specified. Perfect. This is what we need. I'm gonna grab some dummy code here. Let's say we have an interface, database, repository, right? And it has a generic type model, for example, right? And then the Scratch files, public function find, I don't know, ID, and it returns model, right? And then you have implementation. Oh, well, actually, I'm gonna scratch what I said just earlier, the thing being only available on interfaces and abstract classes. It is a problem, but the definition here What I meant was the definition type only on interfaces or abstract classes is fine, but you still need anyway. It will become clear. Class generic database repository implements database repository and doesn't. This is what I want, right? And this doesn't implement a type. And then whenever you request a repository, it will be like new generic database repository for one specific model, right? And then over here is the implementation regardless of the type, because I don't know what the syntax would look like, but anyway. Let's continue to read, because it's gonna be clear. I've read through this post already. I know what's coming, so maybe I'm it's clear in my head but not in yours. So let's focus on the blog post for now. Now I have some dummy code in place already. And then classes that implement extend them would be required to fill in those types, right? And then anywhere the type thing appeared in exporter, it would turn into widget exporter, right? Okay, so this is very basics of generics. Okay, all of this is done at compile time, which makes it far easier and faster, and many/most errors would be caught at compile time. Runtime generics, where you could say foo exporter is new, like, okay, this is the problem, right? New exporter foo would still not be possible, but they do not get any harder as a result of going just part way. Yeah, okay, so what they're saying is that their implementation is would only add one way of working with generics, and the more flexible way wouldn't be possible, but it wasn't possible anyway, so the more flexible way, like the fact that it's not there, it's not an issue because you weren't getting anything anyway if this isn't added, right? So this is the question. Actually, I think this is really great from the foundation that they are doing this research up front. Would you support and vote in favor of compile time only generics as described below? But this is like, up until this point, you might think, oh yeah, this is good, right? But I'm going to show you why it's like lacking in a very, very important way. Okay, so they mentioned the prior research thing. That's the blog post I was talking about earlier. Like, runtime generics are not coming was the conclusion here, basically. And yeah, okay. And then associated types, I don't know if we don't need to look into, yeah. What Genia has implemented, though it still needs some polish and extension, is essentially manually monomorphized generics. Okay. Monomorphized generics. If you don't know what that's about, there are basically two ways to handle generics. Either monomorphized or either reified generics. And monomorphized generics is, in my opinion, the way to go. Well, no, not really. We need the third way, but anyway. Monomorphized means that whenever you have, let's go with their example, because I'm gonna make things very confusing otherwise. Let's say we have a class, book repository implements database repository book, right? Let's say we have this class, and then we have author like this. Okay. So behind the scenes, and this is what I mean with compile time generics, PHP would convert these classes to something like class author wait, hang on, I forgot something. Let's say this isn't an interface, because I don't want to make it too complex. Let's say this is an abstract class, right? Something like this, and then we say model find. I don't know what this would look like, doesn't really matter. Something like this. Okay. Ooh. That's, yeah, the problem is with the generic syntax here, it doesn't really work. Okay, so if you have this, right? Oh, this is really gonna annoy me. Yeah. Internally, during compile time, PHP would basically create a class book repository. It would look something like this. It would copy over the code, and it would replace model here with author. And then it would do the same, with book, of course. And then it would do the same with author repository. So that are monomorphized generics. So internally, PHP just like compiles the classes into their real types. Okay, which is good because that way you don't have to do any additional runtime type checks, right? Because like it's just using normal PHP's type system now, and since this compile step happens during compile time, you don't have any runtime impact, but you still get the benefit of being able to use generics. Somewhat. Let's see. What did I want to say apart from that? No, nothing, I think. That are monomorphized generics implemented at compile time. Monomorphization is an approach to generics. There are others, where a specific version of class is created on the fly. Yeah, okay, by the compiler or the engine. That's what I said. Let's see. They are just showing it here. So importer, exporter, thing exporter, widget exporter. I don't know. This should be thing importer, exporter, I think. But anyway, so this is what it looks like, and it sounds pretty neat, right? Except for that you still have to implement your methods here. This is why I was struggling with the interface before, and I quickly changed it to an abstract class, because if you have an interface with generic types, well, you would still have to just implement everything manually, right? You could use a trait for that, which is, I would say, good practice. Now, this can all be enforced at compile time, where it's much cheaper and cached by opcache. Really great. I think that's good. This alone is not full generics capability, but it is in practice a good chunk of it. But it's also possible to specify that the generic type must conform to some other type, like another interface. For example, stuff like this. You have the generic type and it must implement entity. This is my repository example, right? Okay. This would work, but only if blog post implements the entity interface. And it looks nice, right? But then you need to start thinking about what you actually want to do with generics and where they really become useful. Because honestly, this is still quite a lot of code duplication. For every type that you want, you will need a new class, an empty class basically, or maybe a class with use is database repository, something like that. And then something like this, of course. And I actually don't know if traits are included. Let's switch it to T, just to make it easier for you to read. I don't like using T for generic types, but that's another story. And then you can have the implementation here. So in combination with traits, it becomes the interface part becomes a bit more interesting. We're refactoring. I'm so sorry for all the, hang on, can I get rid of all the errors? Disable all. Yeah, but still that I cannot get rid of those. Unfortunate. Now, even if you have the trait and even if you have the interface with the generic types, you still need a class for every specific type you want to have generics for. And this is the big part where it all falls apart for me, because the whole point of generics is that you don't want to do this. Another classic example is the SQL. No, is the class collection, right? Where you would want or array or array list or whatever. Can you imagine still having to create a post collection implements extends collection and then say post? Can you imagine having to do that for all of your types? And this is the big problem for me. That's this is why we need the reason we need generics. The reason they offer as much value as they do is because we don't have to do this anymore. So circling back to the repository thing here, how do we handle this kind of thing now? Or maybe the collection is even simpler. How do we handle collections now? Right? We have a class collection over a let's call it typed collection, because I don't want to like, I know there's Laravel's collection as well, but like typed collection, and you pass it a string for type, right? And then this one implements probably array iterator or iterable, or I don't know, iterator, something like this. Yeah, okay, and I cannot, working in a Scratch file, which is kind of annoying. And then we have current, and then you could do, well, not current actually. Ugh. Let's go back to iterator. Actually, I wanted array access. Yeah, and then, for example, in offset sets, you could do stuff like this, like at runtime, right? You could say, what's it? Offset value. And you could do a check here. If not value instance of this type, you would need to do more complex type checks here, then you would throw an exception. And this way you could create one class instead of having to like create a class for every single type and still have some kind of type checking during runtime, like the certainty that nothing will end up in this collection. Let's say book collection equals new typed collection, something like this, right? And then we have author collection on author, right? This really sucks, to be honest, because you don't get any static insights into this, because it's all runtime type checks, right? Your IDE doesn't know that this actually, when you loop over a book collection, it doesn't know that this is book, right? Because it's all like runtime type check hacks added into it. And so this is where the current generics proposal could still add some value. I'm not saying it doesn't add any value, but imagine having to like create a class, an empty class essentially, post collection extends typed collection post book collection. I should have used author here, right? And this is just like really becoming a mess really quickly. Okay, so I hope that I've dug into that point enough now, but let's continue to read. Although not yet implemented, Gina is confident that a few natural extensions are also possible and straightforward if enough time is put into them. They could probably be included in the initial RFC. First, allowing abstract classes to be generic as well. Okay, I didn't know. I thought that was already part of the deal, but personally, I don't mind. I'm only using interfaces anyway, but yeah. Of particular note, the inheriting class wouldn't need to actually do anything beyond specifying the type, and like you end up with a lot of empty classes for type-specific things. Okay. The net result is that we may see a proliferation. I don't know what the word means. Rapid increase in the number of amount of something, of empty extending classes that just specify a type and have no body on their own, as a surrogate for what in other languages would be like on the fly. Yeah, I don't know, in PHP that would instead be spelled something like this. Like, who wants to do this? And that's the manual monomorphization we talked about. Not ideal, but it's still more powerful than the status quo as of PHP 8.4. And I would say I don't think that's really true, because if we go to our let's see, database model. This is like not a repository, but a database model. Sorry, select query builder is what I want. A query builder, right? Repository, query builder. It returns a model, right? Like the status quo in PHP right now is that we already can do a lot more than this with doc blocks. This IDE understands this. Static analyzers understand this. It works. And you create a let's see, usually from like a class string, which is a type that we would definitely need in hang on, I can do it like this. Where's my Oh, no. I need this. Hang on. Oh, there's also no doc blocks here. That's why it doesn't work. Okay, that's a bug. You would usually, you do like pass in a class string, right? And then there's this special class string, param class string, class name, something like this. That's able to map to generic types. And all static analyzers and IDEs understand this special class string type, right? So that's what we've settled on. So I would say that like no one who's already using generics today wants to switch that for something built into PHP that's able to do a lot less, right? Second, type declarations. It would already be possible to type against blog post repository, as that's just a boring old class like we've already known. Yeah, so that's kind of like taking a shortcut, right? Where's my Scratch file? Okay, so they're saying you have to make book collection. So you don't have to do, you don't like need anything. What's a good name here? Save, I don't know, no. List books. And then instead of having to write this, right? Well, this is not needed because we already have book collection, right? So it's kind of like turning something bad into something useful, but like to me it doesn't work that way. Exactly the same thing like over here, you want to inject a repository for a specific type via the container, right? Yeah, this doesn't work, but it's okay because you already have user entity repository created as a separate class. That's not what we want to do with generics. At least I don't want to do that with generics. Hey, let's see here because people are talking chat. Nuno here, thanks for the explanation. So I can't just do user collection new. Yeah, I need to create a separate user collection class. That's pretty annoying. Exactly, Nuno. And you'll notice that it's not just pretty annoying. It's like it's unworkable, I find. Maybe people can say that I'm exaggerating here, but like I've done a lot of reading and talking about generics in the past. I use them in my code base, but like with doc blocks, they work kind of fine. If I don't forget to add them. It's crucial. It's not just, it's the reason why generics exist, to not having to make these type specific classes anymore. So yeah. Oh, hang on. Let's see what else is being said. Liam here. Oh no, you were replying to someone. I don't know. There is just something to be said about PHP docs today, Nuno says. Non-PHP developers don't see them as a PHP feature. And Nuno, I totally agree with you. This is like everything we can do with generics is already possible, kind of. Let's go to my select variable here. Like we already have doc blocks. All static analyzers kind of agree on 95% of the syntax. Right, there are some small difference there. There has been some efforts to trying to bring the generics spec together by PHP Storm and then PHP Stan and some, but it didn't really work out. But in general, it kind of works. So why would anyone who is using this style of syntax already, why would they trade it for something that does less? That doesn't make sense to me. Unless, of course, we really want built-in syntax. And I'm for that. I don't want to write doc blocks because they don't really feel like part of my code, right? I would really much like just built-in syntax, the same way we got attributes instead of doc blocks annotations, right? Attributes don't do anything that we couldn't do with doc blocks annotations, but they are more convenient and maybe more pretty to look at. I don't know. So the only reason we need generic syntax at this point is not for runtime type checks. It's for prettier syntax because everything is already possible. And I'm promising you, everyone who's using generics today, they won't switch to the lesser runtime compile time syntax that's provided by PHP because it doesn't do 80% of the work. It does 20%, right? So Okay. One thing I like about the native generic style over doc blocks, Liam says, is that the types live by the parameter instead of a separate doc block. That's true. Yeah. Because over here, let's see, here's a class string, right? You have to define the type and then you have to attach the variable name to it. So there's some duplication there. If you would have class string here, which we don't, but a class string type, let's say class string exists, you wouldn't need that duplication anymore. Okay. That being said, also you don't have like with because I know some people will ask about attributes and can't we use attributes for that? No, we can't, because you need to be able to type return types which don't get attributes with them anyway. The dude who maintains Psalm was making the same point about doc blocks versus this proposal. One thing the proposal doesn't mention is syntax like, yeah, okay, let's, Whoopi, I read that. I think you mentioned that on the Reddit thread, right? I'm gonna copy it here. So this would be possible to do on the fly. And then I guess you would pass in the your books over here. So new class, an anonymous class extending from, or implementing, but probably extending in that case, from books, right? So you could do this, but like, who wants to do this every time they return or well, no, they return something, because like the new class syntax won't work with, did I have a, with this over here? You cannot say, you cannot type for that, right? Okay. Let's see, there is a package that was released some months ago that does user space generics by hacking the array object class. So you would use array syntax for generics. that's funny. Fennec says this on YouTube. Folks, but the thing you really need to understand is that the power of generics doesn't come from any runtime check you do. And I've written about this before. We don't need runtime type checks. We really don't need. The power that comes with generics and the type system in general is being able to run a static analyzer, right? And just have it check all the types for you before the code has been run. Okay, that's why we have types. I never ever run into runtime type errors. That's because I have PHP stan check my code for me. Okay, so there are tools like PHP stan and Psalm that do it like bulk analysis over your whole code base, and then there are tools like PHP Storm that will give real-time insights, like for example the book collection here, getting auto-completion PHP Storm, knowing that this is a book without having to add var book, right? Right, getting this without having to add the manual doc blocks everywhere telling you what types you're dealing with. That is the value of generics, right? It has nothing to do with runtime type checks. There is one remark to make where it is pretty useful to do. Going back to our repository example, if you have like, I know Nuno is watching the stream, so I'm going to use final now. Final class book controller. We have like show book ID. Book ID is good. There are other ways to do this, of course, but book ID, and we'll return a view. Illuminate, no. Oh, it's so annoying that I'm in a Scratch file and some things don't work. But anyway, what you want to do here is private repository book repository, and then retrieve the book, like this book repository get book ID. Like you would, like this particular example, you would probably just do book, right? And then, but you get what I mean with injecting generic dependencies here, right? Again, this is not possible with the current proposal because you would need to create an implementation called book repository. It's a difficult word to write, but and so this is where you would like some type information to be available via reflection, because this is going through your container, right? So I imagine there would be like you would have your constructor parameters here. You would loop over constructor params as param, which is a reflector parameter reflection thingy, and I would check if there's a generic type equals get generic type, something like this, and then within your container do some more stuff to actually auto-wire this to the right repository. Maybe that wouldn't even be necessary depending on like the implementation, but like this is the only kind of thing we need during runtime when we're talking about generics, some kind of like meta information for meta programmer. Yours asks what PHP level you're on. PHP Stan level I'm on. Not super high. I don't even, okay, here. Level 5. Yours. I know I can go higher. I don't care. Okay, collection. One of the most common uses for generics is collections. Also, we need to stop saying this. I don't know where this comes from, and I've probably had like played my part in this. I think collections are an easy example to like understand what generics are about. But honestly, like the repository example that you inject as a dependency would be way more common than collections. Well, maybe the same commonness, communality. I don't know, but like it's just a total misconception that generics is the same as typed arrays. So we need to like stop saying that. Actually, you know, something that I just thought of, the very most important feature that comes with generics, something else that makes this proposal like not really useful to me, I don't want to say useless, but less useful, is the fact that we don't have class string. Class string is such an important part of being able to let's search for an example here. Like the fact that you pass in a class string and you return an object of that class string, like this is just something that static analyzers agreed on as a syntax, right? So if class string with a generic type is typed somewhere, then PHP Storm, for example, will infer that the class string that's passed in here can be used, its type can be used like for the return, for example, something like this. Which in case of a container, it's a good example. Right, you container get application, you expect this to be application, right? And you expect auto-completion here. It's not part of this RFC. It's not even an RFC. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry. The repository is collection. Why doesn't PHP just do what C++ does? C++ generates generics, just generate in the background different classes for generic types when you compile them. So yeah, monomorphized generics, like proper monomorphized generics is what you're talking about, and the blog post is going to mention this later, I think. Let's first read through the collection part. I've done my rant about collections not being generics. One of the most common uses of generics is for collections. But be they typed arrays or objects. The details vary by language, but a collection known to be a certain type is very valuable. It is true, it's useful. The previous blog post included a discussion of a collection designed by Derek and Larry, which included a custom one-off syntax for essentially the behavior described here. This was a previous suggestion for generics, which I also didn't really like. Updating that design for this syntax would give us 3 interfaces. Let's see, we have a sequence, a set, and a dictionary, right, with like generics. And you would still have to extend them, right? No on-the-fly new dictionary creation, or set, or sequence. Those concrete classes could have additional methods in them if desired, but that's optional. It's like trying to spin it in a positive way again. Like, oh yeah, now you have a class, you can do more stuff with it. Yeah, but that's not really what we need. The above would be sufficient to have a collection that maps integers to book objects. Yeah. The above design could be implemented either in core or user space. There's definite benefit to them being built in. Yeah, okay, longer term. I actually don't know if, because I wanted to look. Let's go to here actually. And then remember or forget to go back, because I think this was the important part actually. Notably absent from the above plan, well, the really, really hard bits. At this time, it's still not clear that they would be possible. And this is why I think Liam said, like, why not do this now? And then we already have something and then we can build on top of it. The thing is, if we do this, as far as I understand, there is no going back. There is no like adding the harder parts later, because the harder parts are still, there is no way around it that trying to do this at runtime has a massive performance impact, which is why you do it during compile time. Okay, so in particular, a syntax like block repository like this one is still not on the table. The challenge is that the partial approach there's some, I don't know if you can hear that. Sorry. The challenge is that the partial approach described here can put all the extra tracking data it needs on the class and do all the work at compile time. So this is the important part. If you want to do this, right, you will need to add generic type information to, I don't know, the variable probably, and then check that everywhere during runtime. Because PHP does its type checks at runtime. The police are coming hide, yeah. They're coming to arrest me because I'm criticizing this generics proposal. If you want to have this syntax combined with PHP's current type system, you need to do a lot of type checks at runtime. Anytime you pass a variable that could be a generic variable, you know. I remember some details from the older blog post where it becomes such a mess doing generic type checks everywhere at runtime. And so we talked about monomorphized generics, and this is like the most basic version of monomorphized generics where the programmer does most of the work. Because doing this why doesn't PHP compile all of this to like something like a truly monomorphized repository on the fly without you having to specify the class? That I actually don't know. I guess it's just too difficult to do. I don't know. Anyway, monomorphized generics. Then you have reified generics. Reified generics, they just keep the type information as is during runtime and will check the types at runtime, which is totally undoable for PHP. Like, way too big a performance impact. Not gonna happen. Like, Nikita looked into it, Gina looked into it. I think together with Larry actually half a year ago. It's not gonna happen. And then there is the proposal I've been shouting about for years now. Just don't check generic types, or even better, don't check types at all at runtime. Opt-in, of course, but you know, we don't need runtime generics. We just need the nice syntax so that we can get rid of the ugly parts in like over here, and that's it. Let the static analyzers handle all the rest. And then another benefit would be that PHP comes up with a proper spec for generics, so that all static analyzers can just follow that instead of trying to implement their own thing. Because like each static analyzer has their like own small details and differences between them, which is really annoying. Supporting on-the-fly declarations with new would require putting extra. I read that right. And doing work at runtime. So that's why it's not possible. because we're still approaching this from a runtime type checker perspective. Generic compound types also are not possible. To be honest, not that big a deal, I find. Generics are also like this kind of thing that you shouldn't overuse it, because before you know it, you just end up in like in a very bad place, a very complex place. But yeah, so they mention it for like completion's sake probably. But I would be fine if this wasn't included. Type inference is a feature yeah. But I mean, like PHP does very little type inference, so I get that they don't really like want to go this way, and I would be fine with not having like too complex type inference. But we've learned to deal with that already, basically. So let's look at the example here. We have a class driver with a driver here. This is the full version. Yeah. So where you can ditch basically this type, the generic type here, because PHP knows that this type is linked to this one, right? This is the class string example actually that I was talking about. Again, this is something that would be trivial to implement if we only had real compile time or statically analyzed generics. Runtime erased. I call them runtime ignored generics because I wanted generic information to still be available at runtime for meta programming like the container example I showed. But PHP, please don't do anything with it. Just act as if the generic type is not there, okay? So should we? No. Not like, in my opinion, no. Let's not do this, because it's going to, if we add this, like a solution that solves 20% of the real use cases for generics, right? There is no way back, right? If we do this, it means that we're committed to checking generic types somehow at runtime. Not really, because they are compiled. Well, the user has to compile them themselves because they have to come up with their own implementations. But let's not do this. It doesn't add any value of what we can already do with dog blocks today. Oh, Ryan is here. Why can't we just get type erased generics as an initial step and then come back to add real-time support for it all? Ryan, here's why. Because if we do type erased generics, like no one will want runtime support anymore, because it's like generics aren't, Roman is here as well, but generics, folks, generics aren't a runtime tool. And we're trying to fit it, we're trying to fit a square into a round hole, right? It doesn't work. And we've been going back and forth about this for years, and the solution is simple. Roman is here. Roman is the not the chair, the director of the foundation. Roman, Liam says, you're the man who can make it happen. Roman, please type erase generics, please. Let's see, should we? No, we should not. But I'm still going to read this, of course. This work is still experimental. As noted above, there are a few there's a few additional features still to add and dozens of edge cases and crafty corners. Yeah, sure. What happens if you implement two generic interfaces? Do anonymous classes make anything weirder? Actually, the fact that they mentioned this might imply that it's not supported yet. I don't know, Bowie, who said it before. There's much work ahead to bring compile time generics to a avoidable state. The foundation wants to be respectful of the time of the development team. And I really, like I mentioned this before, this is really good that they're blogging about this and sharing the idea before like putting more work into it. And I hope the answer now will be, no, we're not gonna go further down this road and we're just gonna implement type erased generics. The time of the many RFC reviews and the pocket books of our generous sponsors. Yeah, sure. Foundation staff have already sunk quite a bit of time into the question of generics. Before we sink more time into it, we want to ask the community and PHP internals especially, is it worth it? No, it's not this approach. I'm sorry to be like, I don't want to sound condescending or anything, but like it's not gonna solve the issues that people are dealing with. So anyway, yeah, it's gonna solve 20% of the issues people are dealing with. But would a partial generics approach like that described here be acceptable, even if it may not be possible to go all the way to full generics? Would compile time only generics be a big enough win to justify spending more time on it? Our team thinks it is, but PHP is larger than our team, so we want to get feedback from the broader community. This has been my feedback. Do with it what you want. I'm only one person as well. I did read some feedback from Mugluck, for example. Mugluck here was the creator of Psalm. He has moved on to Hack, and he says, I'm speaking not so much as a maintainer of Psalm, which I'm not anymore, but he's speaking as someone who has done who has worked years on static analysis as like his job, and is still doing so, I think, but with Hack. But as someone who writes a lot of Hack code, Hack has both runtime erased generics and runtime enforced non-generic types, a middle ground, yes, which the previous documents did not seriously consider. Over 1,000 Slack developers have used that partially erased type system without issue. And millions of Python and TypeScript devs. Oh yeah, TypeScript, the other example of type erasure. The latter group, having considerable overlap with PHP developers, use fully erased type systems too. I mean, how much proof do you need? PHP is a happy mishmash of different paradigms already. I don't think community leaders need to draw a hard line when it comes to type erasure. So that's one, I think. Let's see here. This is the current maintainer of Psalm. I read through the proposal, have some strong opinions about it. On top of the list, no generic support for new is the worst offender, right? No compound type support, at least from my knowledge of internals, monomorphization could be naively implemented by copying the class entry and switching out type hints. This is a bit too much in depth for me. The article ends on this argument. There's no guarantee that new generic compound types will ever be possible, but they are not made any less possible by adopting parts of the generics that we can do. But this is not true. Well, hang on, let's see what he writes. This argument is not true, as adopting generics without new support will lead to a proliferation. I don't even know what that means. Oh, it's the same word. Yeah. Of boilerplate legacy code in PHP code bases, which cannot be removed. Yes, this is so important. If you add this syntax and people start embracing it, we're stuck with it, even in a future version of PHP, which may add erased generics later. So yeah, exactly. This statement here, I lost it. Anyway, that statement is not true. No type inference support. While technically not the worst offender, this signals the main underlying issue with the proposal. Instead of tackling the root of the issue, cheap and incomplete workarounds are proposed, all with significant short-sighted drawbacks, which will negatively impact the language. I do feel like we need to take a moment here, because I'm also reading, I'm passionately reading here, but it's in no way a critique on the blog post or the work that Gino was doing or Larry was doing. I mean, we're all figuring this out together, right? I'm very passionate about it. I think they're doing a great job here. And it's awesome to see that the foundation is putting more time into it and actually takes the time to write a big blog post about it, to ask for input before continuing the work. So yeah. Anyway, those are two interesting things that stood out to me. I need to read through the comments a bit more. So yeah, let's see what if I missed something here in chat. The argument, Roman says, the big boss says, the argument against erased generics is that it makes the type system very inconsistent. As in, sometimes types are runtime checked and enforced, changed, the others would not. I don't care, Roman, I don't care. Let's just do it. I mean, you know how much time I will gain by having generic syntax in PHP that is not type checked at runtime. I don't care that part of it is type checked at runtime. I mentioned earlier in the stream, I don't run into type errors during runtime because I type check my whole code base up front before running the code. So for me, you can remove all the type checks. I don't care. There are some optimizations there based like performance optimizations that make use of the type system. So you cannot just strip all the types, right? You still need type information during runtime, but the checks themselves, doesn't matter. I'm serious. Anyone who has a code base right now, start using PHP stem or SOM and run it with every commit you do. You will not run into type errors anymore during runtime if you run them on high enough level. That's a side note, of course. You need to like make sure that things are correct. Liam says, lean into PHP's type system being inconsistent. Also, the argument against erased types that comes up is that then it's just documentation and people will ignore it. Folks, what about attributes? That's my biggest counter argument. We got attributes. They were documentation. They're nothing more than documentation. There is nothing that about attributes that influences runtime behavior except when you choose to do so via reflection. So it's exactly the same. If generic types are just documentation and people will ignore it, well, then we say the same about attributes, and we're using attributes all over the place. Honestly, all the big frameworks are and Tempest are embracing attributes everywhere. So that's a non-argument. Roman, I'm passionate about this, but like I'm totally fine with it. Strict type is already a bit weird when it comes to type checking, Liam says. Absolutely. So yeah, it's already inconsistent anyway, Ryan says, because we rely on third-party tools to check those generic types and use reduced accuracy at runtime. Yeah, and Roman here, he's just highlighting the arguments people have. Basically, they believe that runtime checked generics would make more sense because then no one can ignore them. If Shudder here, if PHP was kind of consistent. Apart from PHP's native attributes that act like more like decorators, Ryan says. Yeah, that was the point I was. I think you're agreeing with the point I was making, Ryan. Maybe I misunderstand. Hang on. We shouldn't. Liam, it was good having you here. You're going. Bye-bye. No, I really don't think this is the right approach. And I'm super glad that the foundation put out this blog post and asked for opinions about it. I think it's really valuable. I really hope that not mine, but many other people's voices get heard and not ignored. And we've been saying this for years, that the solution is clear. Everyone who's using generics today would be fine with it. So we just need runtime erased generics, folks. Okay. This has been good, right? One thing I wanted to mention here that I think is really, we really need to be aware of this. I was a bit scared seeing this Reddit post with so many comments and upvotes and people who are just yeah, generics, woo, compile time generics, they're coming, woo. It's not as simple as that, and folks, you really need to read this blog post in full. I've skimmed through some parts, I skipped some parts. You really need to not just say, oh yeah, compile time generics, yay. No, there is so much context here, and if there is something if there is one thing that I don't want to end up in PHP, it's this. And it would be so sad if there are just too many people shouting yes without realizing what they are shouting yes to. So yeah, just be conscious of that. The blog post is really well written. Everyone can read through it. There maybe you need to scan through some of the code parts a couple times before you understand, but it's really easy to follow along. So don't just shout yes Please read it and then form your own opinion. So yeah, why not create a first-party PHP static analyzer tool first, so that people would be encouraged to use that? Then we could go the generic type erasure route. AJ, that's a really interesting suggestion. And I actually think this is the answer. The first step into getting type erased generics is to have a built-in static analyzer that ships with PHP. But imagine like that. First thing, it's not easy to write a static analyzer. Second thing, if PHP ships with a static analyzer, imagine like what would happen to PHP Stan or Psalm. That's like, it would have a pretty big impact on those projects. Like, you cannot really just do all the work and then say, hey folks, thanks for all the years where you did it. Now PHP comes with a built-in implementation. Honestly, for PHP developers, it would be the best thing to do. But ideally, there is a situation where Psalm and PHP Stan work together with internals to get one unified static analyzer built into core with no new features or anything, and just then build on top of that. So yeah. Ryan here, I wonder what the actual limitations are that prevent us from getting new setbook from working at compile time. Yeah, I'm actually wondering about that as well, honestly. They were talking about it. They were talking about it here, right? And they haven't provided like a satisfying answer, in my opinion, because PHP could also just compile this to like an on-the-fly implementation, but there are obviously like so many edge cases that I'm not like smart enough to to think about. But yeah, because what you're describing there, Ryan, is true monomorphization, and would still be overkill, much more complex to do than runtime erased generics, and at best you get the same amount of features. But yeah, like imagine runtime erased generics, right? Imagine all the things you can do because you're not obstructed or limited by the runtime. You don't have to care. Well, you do. You still need to care about performance, but it's okay if things take half a second. You know, that's fine. And likely because PHP Stan and Psalm are both written in PHP. Imagine what would happen if someone, Ryan, is writing a static analyzer in Rust. Actually, not Ryan. I know, Ryan, you were working on that as well. I don't know the status of that, but Margot PHP. This is actually what Margot is doing. Ajesh is working on this, and Margot started out as a linter basically, but they've now recently just added some static analyzing stuff as well, and this is written in Rust. You know how much faster it is? Like composer Margot Fumt. Let's see. Oh, it's already done. I don't know what's it doing right now, but oh, now it's linting also, formatting and linting. It's super fast. Like this is a pretty big code base already. If you do this with PHP CS Fixer, it's like super slow. Let's see. I agree that PHP needs better first-party tools. Ryan says there's no reason those guys can't be the ones to do it in core. True, but they need to want it. And as far as I know, at least 2 years ago, they didn't want it. But I don't know where they are today. Andre and what was the other folk? Danok, Gently, I don't know. Dan, maybe. So What's the solution here? It's runtime erased generics. And I'm gonna keep saying that. And I really don't want this to end up in PHP because it's gonna set a precedent that we cannot go back from. That's a difficult word as well. I don't know if I used it correctly, but. So yeah, the shiny player here, not adding something to PHP because someone else has created a project that does a similar thing is a terrible reason for not adding something useful. Yeah, but at the same time, think about it the other way. What is PHP, right? What makes PHP valuable? Is it the language itself? Is it the compiler? Or is it the community? And of course, part of it is the language and the compiler. But the reason PHP still exists today is because of its community. And if you want to support and keep support that community, you cannot just say from one day to another, hey folks, this has been your life's work for the past 5 to 10 years. Thank you, we're now doing it. That's like, it's not gonna reflect well on internals. And it's not gonna reflect well on PHP. So you need to take those things into account. There are a lot of third-party developers that don't want to work with internals because the overall experience of internals is kind of toxic. Fennec, I wouldn't say toxic, but I get what those people mean. I do want to say, like with the foundation, I feel like they are so open to communication and feedback. They aren't the internals, right? Everything the foundation does still has to go through internals and RFC votes, but they are very open. I mean, Roman is here in chat. Roman is, of course, I work with him together. He's my colleague at JetBrains, so we've known each other for a long time. He's so open for feedback, and he's a great person to relay that feedback back to the foundation team. So, I mean, things are different compared to 5 or 10 years ago in PHP world, and like for good. The fact that they're writing this blog post to ask for opinions before just pushing forward and trying to put it into an RFC is really good. So yeah, folks, I think we're ready to wrap up. This was a great ramble. I planned on also making this into a video, but I feel like I went all over the place, and I might like re-record a proper video for it. But thank you for indulging me and staying with me here. It was really good. Like great questions as well. Some more comments here. I can still read them. Is deprecation necessary if the system? I don't know, Yogesh, really what you mean with that question. I'm gonna skip it because I wanna wrap up here. Fennec, I know the foundation is separate. I'm talking specifically about internals in extension to the conversation about Psalm working with internals. Yeah, but and like circling back to that, then I think if Psalm and PHP Stan would get in touch with the foundation now, I think a lot of things could happen. I'm fairly certain a lot of things could happen. A lot of good things for PHP. But everyone needs to be involved, right? And if that doesn't work out, then yeah, I don't know. It's also like, it's a big undertaking to write a static analyzer from scratch. Like, don't underestimate that. But for PHP, for the good of PHP, honestly, built-in static analyzer, type erased generics, and then when everyone's used to that, type erased everything. And the world will be a better place. Folks, thanks for being here. It was great. Some good insights here. I hope I shared my point with you as well. I hope you take my opinion into account if you're trying to form your own, but definitely go form your own. Read the blog post. The link is in the description. And I hope to see you in the next one. Don't forget to leave a comment and like and all the things. And then, yeah, see you in the next video. Bye-bye.